Yes.
Thank you.
Great. All right, looks like we are now streaming, so I will go ahead and kick us off. Morning, everybody. I'm Stephanie Page. I'm the Deputy Director here at the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board. Our chair, our committee chair, Kelly Coates, may be a little late to the committee meeting this morning. She had a conflict and so asked me to go ahead and get us started today. So I will share a few logistical items and then we'll get going. So just a reminder to everybody on the committee meeting today that it's being streamed live on OWEB's YouTube channel and will be recorded. And for folks who are watching this morning on YouTube, meeting materials are in the board and committee section of the OWEB website. Committee meeting materials are towards the bottom of the page, and viewers can click on the relevant committee meeting and have access to today's meeting materials as well as recordings and materials from past committee meetings. So we're going to go ahead and have folks introduce themselves. Before I do that, I do want to note that we did not receive any written comment prior to today's committee meeting. We will do a call for public comments from folks who are on the meeting this morning here in just a couple of minutes. So just wanted anybody who's on the meeting today who wants to give public comment to have a minute or two to prepare for that, if that is something you would like to do. So I will start with our committee members who are on today, having you introduce yourselves, and I'll start with Bruce.
Good morning. I'm Bruce Buckmaster. I'm a public member of the board from Astoria, Oregon. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. Aaron.
Good morning. My name is Aaron Curtis. I am the OWEB representative for the Bureau of Land Management.
Thanks, Aaron. Sarah.
Hi, everybody. I am Sarah O'Brien, Executive Director of OWEB, and this is my first committee meeting. So thanks for welcoming me today, if you're welcoming me. Thanks for allowing me to attend anyway.
Welcome. Courtney.
Good morning. I am Courtney Schaff, OWEB's Monitoring and Reporting Program Manager.
Nicole.
Good morning, everyone. Nicole Bettinardi. I am the board liaison and the exec assistant.
Eric Williams.
Good morning, everyone. Eric Williams. I'm the Restoration Grants Manager at OWEB.
Eric Hartstein.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Eric Hartstein, Policy Coordinator at OWEB.
Ken Fetcho.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Ken Fetcho, and I am OWEB's Effectiveness Monitoring Coordinator and Tribal Liaison.
And Amy.
Hi, good morning. Amy Charette. I'm the Region 6 Program Representative.
Great. And then we've got a couple of folks joining us today. Angela Parada, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Angela Parada, use she, her pronouns, and I am the CFO analyst for OWEB. I'm glad to be joining you.
Oh, we're glad that you could join us today. And then I see Marlene.
Good morning, Marlene Olson, and I'm just here to observe.
Right. I think I've covered everyone. People kept moving around on my screen, but I hopefully covered everybody who's on this morning. So I'm going to review the meeting agenda and then we'll do a call for any public comment from folks who want to raise their hand. Navigate to my agenda here. So we're going to start. Oops, bear with me. Go. Okay, we're going to start with a quarterly outreach update. We'll do a review of the OWEB DEI action plan. We'll hear an overview of the new tribal project development grants and then review some proposed revisions to the OWEB small grant rules, and then wrap up by talking about topics for the next meeting. So I will find my outreach slide here. Oh,
Stephanie, just a quick question. If Kelly's not on yet, I know she knows a lot about the tribal project development grants. It might be good to switch the order and talk about those first and then the DEI action plan for her to join.
Okay, so you're saying hold the tribal project development grants until she's available to be on?
No, move those first above the DEI action plan because she
Oh,
has
I
been
see, because
involved
she's
a
already
lot.
familiar. Okay, I
Yeah.
see what you're saying. That's fine.
Okay.
Thanks, Courtney. Okay, moving on to outreach for the quarter. So a few meetings since the last DEI committee meeting. Taylor Larson and myself met with Association of Oregon Counties to talk about Tidegate work and kind of problem solving and the convener role of the Tidegate partnership. On August 21st, I attended a networking event for diverse professionals who've moved to the state to help folks create community connections. It's called Say Hey, and I've attended several in the past. This one was held in Bend. So that was, I attended at the OSU Cascades campus. That's where the event was held. On August 26th, OWEB's new water and climate coordinator, Alexa Schmidt, met with a team from Willamette Partnership and the Northwest Environmental Justice Center regarding outreach and engagement around the new natural and working lands funds that were allocated to OWEB. And then last week, Sarah O'Brien and I met with Sam Barrasso, who's the manager of the Portland Clean Energy Fund, to talk about ways that our programs could complement each other. It was a great conversation. Learned a lot about the program and some of the related program elements, perhaps that intersect with OWEB's work. So a couple of those included a green infrastructure program element, as well as a regenerative agriculture program element. Sam also shared some information with us about the Portland Bureau of Environmental Services grants. And we had just some good community of practice type conversations as organizations that both do grant making. So that was great. Also wanted to mention that in addition to the new partner outreach that I just reviewed, OWEB had a government to government visit in June with the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde with Lindsay McClary and Kelly Dirksen and several other staff from the Natural Resources Department. We toured some acquisitions and saw some current and planned restoration projects. I also wanted to mention that we have some standing meetings that we do, and I usually remind folks of this every time we have a committee meeting. OWEB leadership holds quarterly outreach and engagement meetings with the conservation community, the agriculture community, and organic partners. And then we have a monthly meeting with folks from the Oregon Conservation Partnership. I also wanted to mention, I keep a list of future partners to reach out to that OWEB board members have suggested and that staff have suggested. Some folks on that list we have reached out to and they aren't available for whatever reason, but we try to keep a list of suggestions for future outreach as well. So that wraps up the partner to partner outreach unless anyone has any questions.
Stephanie, I have to admit, you asked me to add anything I could think of to this list, and I just thought of one that I wanted to let folks know as we've been working on hiring for the new Environmental Restoration Council manager. We did include a member of a subcommittee of the State's Racial Justice Council, Alain Reyes Santos, in that hiring process. And then Andre Beeler, who's the governor's director of equity and racial justice, was able to join us for those as well. So I don't know if that counts as non-traditional partner outreach, but I think it's a good thing for this committee to know.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. All right. Pivoting back to my agenda here. Okay, so Courtney, why don't you and Ken go ahead and do the tribal project development grants overview then?
Great. So we have a few slides we're going to share just to kind of give a little bit of background to the committee about kind of how we got to the decision and to pursue funding for tribal project development grants. And then I'm going to talk about what the grants are and the outreach we've done around those grants. And so I'm going to share my screen and Ken's going to kick us off. And let's see here, you always think you know what you're doing until, let's see, I can see you, Stephanie. Do you see the slide? Excellent. Great. Kick it off, Ken.
All right. You can go to the next slide, if that's okay.
Yes, there we go.
Sweet. So Courtney and I just thought it'd be good to provide some context as to how we got here to develop OWEB's first tribal specific grant opportunity. In order to do that, we wanted to share some of the findings that emerged from the assessment of OWEB's grant practices impacts to tribes. And this assessment kind of kicked off in 2020 and was completed at the end of 2021. Reviewed OWEB's grant practices to understand if there are existing barriers that impact federally recognized tribes' ability to apply for and receive funds that meet their watershed enhancement goals and objectives. And, we've been working on incorporating these findings ever since it was completed. So next slide, please. All right. So we felt it was important to have a third party perform this review because we're just so close to this work. And sometimes there are barriers that we're just unable to see. Plus, when you ask your grantees questions, you may not get a candid response because of that dynamic between a funder and a grantee. And so in 2020, we successfully recruited a graduate student from Portland State University's School of Public Policy to perform this assessment. And her name was Allie Miller, and she was the lead author on the report. And she and I worked really closely with Maida Lofsgarden, at the time OWEB's executive director, to provide direction on the assessment and provide information so she could do the work. The final report, like I said, was completed in October of 2021 and was presented to the board at that time. And so she performed a mixed methods assessment that used quantitative and qualitative data. The quantitative data came from our granting database, OGMAS, and looked at the tribes who applied for and received grants from OWEB to better understand what grant programs tribes at that time were pursuing and how they were partnering with our other grantees, their partners in their local watershed that were the lead applicant on. And so it's important to note that we focused this assessment on our three most popular grant programs: open solicitation, which includes restoration, technical assistance, engagement, monitoring grants, but also land and water acquisition. And the FIP, the Focused Investment Partnership Grant Program, and our small grant program. So those are the three grant programs that we focused on looking at which tribes applied for and how tribes partner with other lead applicants on. And so the qualitative data came from interviews of OWEB staff and all 9 fairly recognized tribes in Oregon and the Nez Perce tribe. And so Allie perform these interviews with tribes' natural resources staff that were familiar with our grant programs, just to get that more detailed information and responses. And several of our, sometimes several people from each tribe participated, so they didn't just ask one person the questions. Next slide, please. So 8 key themes emerged from this assessment and was super insightful for our agency to better understand key factors that influence which funding sources tribes pursue, including OWEB funds, to meet their natural resource goals and objectives. And so I won't be going over all these in great detail, but I'd like to emphasize just a few here. And the first one is that third bullet down in the left-hand column. What Allie heard and wrote up in the report is that each tribe is selective about the source of funding and type of OWEB grant that they pursue. Tribes told Allie that there are many factors that they consider and might prefer to have their partners in their watershed be the lead applicant to pursue OWEB funding, as they are participating in different partnerships in the spirit of collaboration. And so you can't just look at the number of grants that tribes apply for to better understand, how they're engaging in our funding opportunities. And so that last one, I'll just point out that directly went to inform the development of this new tribal grant opportunity was that top one on the right-hand column. And what we've heard from them, and we hear from a lot of our applicants, is that time, effort, and organizational capacity is needed to apply for OWEB grants. So next slide, please. So also in the report, there were a total of 18 barriers / recommendations that emerged from the report and spanned several different categories, if you will. There were some that were more administrative in nature, some that were recommending, improvements in communication with OWEB and tribes, and some had implications for funding considerations, and other were sort of related specifically to capacity. And so these 6 that I'm pulling up here to share with you have directly informed our approach to developing this new grant opportunity for tribes. And I just thought I'd walk you through these. So that first one there on the top left, tribes recommended that we host and fund more opportunities for staff from tribes and OWEB at all levels to connect and have discussions and meet annually. And, we can discuss grant program eligibility, application timelines, training opportunities, et cetera. And a few examples of how we've really embraced that currently is Courtney has been meeting with Shane James, our cultural resource specialist, and each tribe's cultural resources staff to talk about OWEB's soon to be new obligations under the National Historic Preservation Act based on an agreement with NOAA and the State Historic Preservation Officer. And so, and also, meetings that we're beginning to have with tribes now to tell them about this grant opportunity are another example of specifically about meeting to discuss a new grant program and eligibility, timelines, et cetera. That second one underneath there, we heard, and we hear this commonly from other grantees, that match funding requirements can be challenging and burdensome to meet. And so we took that into consideration. And Courtney will share some more information, but essentially we've reduced the match requirement. We've lowered it, so hopefully it's a little bit easier to meet. And tribes also were really adamant, and we continue to see this as new grant agreements come through, that they recommend that we include language in the grant agreements that it's specific for tribes to make it easier for tribal council and leadership to confidently sign the agreement. And recently, we had the Department of Justice approve some of the conditions that we include in our grant agreements so that it hopefully has them a little more comfortable to sign those grant agreements based on impacts to sovereignty and things like that. That top one on the right, tribes encouraged us to provide funding opportunities, specifically encouraging the use of traditional ecological knowledge or indigenous knowledge. And that was really important for them. And we feel like in this grant solicitation, we're including some specific language around that. That certainly allows tribes to do that if they're interested in doing that in developing projects. That middle one there on the right-hand column provides staff from tribes additional time to approve grant applications before being submitted. And so each tribe needs to go through an internal process to get approved to submit a grant application. Sometimes the timing of that in our grant application deadlines may not be in sync. And so Courtney developed this process where we're going to have rolling application deadlines. So we're certainly getting the word out early now. And so hopefully they can start to work on that, and not having just one singular deadline will hopefully accommodate them to seek those internal approvals before they submit an application. And then finally, that last one that we highlighted there in yellow, they encourage us to make a portion of the grant funds available specifically for tribes. And so that's what we're talking about today. And so I'm just really excited that, we're almost 3 years into this report being completed, and these recommendations still inform our work today. And really, I think it's the long game. It's the long term. How do we work to incorporate these recommendations? And just really happy to work with Courtney on this new grant opportunity for tribes. So maybe I'll just pause, see if there's any questions on there before Courtney dives into the specifics.
Thanks, Ken, for that background. So just on this grant offering, so we have done 2 webinars, and we have a third one actually scheduled for this afternoon, working to provide opportunities for all of the tribes, both the cultural resources and the natural resources staff of the tribes, to ask questions, preview the grant application, give us feedback ahead of launching this. We submitted to NOAA with the federal fiscal year 24 application, a request for $1 million for PCSRF Priority 3 funds for this tribal project development grant offering. And this was in response to specifically language in the notice of funding opportunity that said bill funding, the bipartisan infrastructure law funding, was eligible to support tribal capacity. And so we took this opportunity. I worked with both Kelly and Lindsay to kind of vet it, as well as our executive team and Ken, and we decided to pursue this. At the end, we received $900,000 of PCSRF funding, and we then put in $100,000 of lottery funds, so that there is $1 million available, $100,000 per tribe for Oregon's 9 federally recognized tribes, as well as the NES purse. These are the applicants, so it's non-competitive for them. We are reducing the match down to 5%, and then there's $100,000 available for each of the tribes. The activities have to align with PCSRF eligible activities, since it is predominantly PCSRF funding. So they can use it to design projects, to work with local partners or amongst themselves on planning efforts, project development and design, including incorporating Indigenous knowledge, as Ken said, managing design of projects, and also doing the cultural resources review of projects associated with the programmatic or other projects, since we haven't signed the programmatic yet. Funds can be used internally for internal staff or for hiring a contractor, can be used for permitting, all those types of things. We do have a rolling application deadline, as Ken said. Our intent, hopefully, is to get all the funds into grant agreements before we submit our federal fiscal year 25 application to NOAA, with the intent of, if this funding eligibility is included in the federal fiscal year 25 application, we'll apply again for these funds. So we intend on having application deadlines in November, January, February, and March. At the October board meeting, we'll ask the board to delegate these funds to the executive director, so that we can quickly move from grant application, a review process, any back and forth we need to maybe have with the tribe to clarify how they're intending to use the funds. Again, it's not competitive. We're not going to tell them these aren't the right priorities. It's up to each tribe to determine how they want to use the funds. But we just have to, clarify things or work back and forth, and then we'll move to grant agreement. Ken's going to be the project manager on all of these grants, and they have until December 31st, 2028 to spend down the funds, so plenty of time. We did hear in some of the feedback when we were doing some of the initial outreach with tribes, is some tribes might want, the cultural resources staff and the natural resources staff might want to apply for their own separate grants. And so Ken and I will be working with folks. If tribes want to submit 2 applications, that'll be okay. And we'll work with them to make sure that those applications don't exceed the amount eligible per tribe. The application's really streamlined. Again, we just need to have an understanding of what the proposed actions are in the budget to ensure they align with PCSRF eligible activities. And the completion reporting will be pretty streamlined also, and the payments will be all online, again, with Ken as the project manager. So far, all of our conversations with tribes have been just nothing but positive feedback and appreciation for these funds. Some of them recognizing that, you know, $100,000 by the time tribes take indirect off, it's only so much money available, but they do appreciate that it's better than nothing and appreciate OWEB's first approach into this grant offering. Questions from board members or comments or thoughts? Nothing? That's
It all
okay.
sounds wonderful.
Thanks, Eric. We're like, as Ken said, it's pretty exciting. Noah was really excited that we included this in our application, and actually we received a phone call. And the reviewers specifically acknowledged that this was a really unique opportunity, and they appreciated that we are taking advantage of the bill funding to award these grants out there. It's been really great as Shane and I have been meeting with tribes around the state to be able to talk about this opportunity. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting the grants out the door and working with the tribes. All right.
Great. Thanks, Ken and Courtney. A couple things before we go to the next agenda item. First, I realized I forgot to do an actual call for public comment for the folks who are on the meeting today. So I'm going to do that now. If anybody on the meeting would like to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. And I'll call on folks one at a time. Going once, going twice. Oh, Courtney, your hand is up.
Oh, nope, not on purpose.
Okay. All right. The other introductory thing I wanted to say before I pass the virtual baton back to Courtney to go through OWEB's DEI action plan is that this is a required submission as part of the agency request budget process. Our agency request budget was due last week and we submitted, hooray. So it included quite a few different required elements, one of which is our affirmative action plan, and then another is our DEI action plan with a cover memo from the agency. So that was submitted last week. And I am going to now turn it back over to Courtney to go over that plan with the committee.
Great.
But actually, before you start, Courtney, I just want to mention I'll be sending that out to board members today. So Aaron, Bruce, any other board members, that you can find that in your inbox today. The full ARB. Sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
Nope. Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen here in a few minutes, and Amy's agreed to take notes today. So we kind of even taking a step back, staff initially drafted this plan to meet the initial deadline, which was about a year ago, June of 23, to submit it as part of governor's expectations. In the drafting of the plan, we worked with the executive team and OWEB's internal idea team to submit the first draft. We then had, Stephanie and I had the opportunity to meet with the Office of Cultural Change and talk through the action plan. And then as part of the whole resolution, board adoption of the resolution process, and I think it was even at this meeting last time, all of the board members just kind of provided some general comments about how they'd like to see the action plan link with other OWEB documents. And that was a really great conversation to listen to, because it gave me a lot of ideas how to go back and take some of your thoughts and comments and rework the action plan to really link it to others, OWEB's other documents, such as our strategic plan, the work of the idea team, the board's resolution, our affirmative action plan, our tribal assessment report. So you'll see throughout here an effort to really start to link these items to the other plans that OWEBs use as our guiding tools. The additional context I'd like to provide is, you know, as Stephanie and I have talked about this, as well as our executive team, we really see this as a living document where we want to be, the idea team wants to be revisiting it on a regular basis, bring it back to this committee, you know, probably once a year to revisit it, talk about the progress we're making, and talk about the actions and adding new actions, updating progress on other actions. You know, in the future, I want to work with Linda to think about how we can track progress within the plan. That's not something we've incorporated into it yet, but something we want to incorporate as we continue to revisit the plan in the future. So before we dive in, are there any overarching comments from anybody?
Oh, I just wanted to add, Courtney, and apologies if you already mentioned this, the Department of Administrative Services has kind of ongoing community of practice conversations and opportunities for agencies to engage. So just so we all kind of share ideas and get ongoing feedback and assistance on both development and modification and implementing of our plans.
Great. Yes, Stephanie. Okay, so I had planned to start sharing at goal 1 and not go through the background pieces unless there is a request to go through those background pieces. But essentially it is the description of the agency, our mission statement, and then just tying this plan and mentioning the plans that we tie back to. But I thought it would really be great to start at each of these goals to have a conversation today. And let's get back to the sharing. And is that generally big enough? I think I can maybe make it a little bigger.
It's pretty good, Courtney.
Okay. All right. So these, and I think a lot of the other pieces of context for all this is to think about, most of these are pretty internal to OWEB within the DEI action plan. There are definitely things that are tie back to the board, and you'll see the last thing on this page is DEI training annually with the OWEB board. We try to do some sort of quarterly training internally with staff. We are trying to continuously with the OWEB's internal team thinking of opportunities for some small group discussions and learning together. Updating obviously our strategic plan to include DEI considerations, which Eric and has been leading through our strategic plan update process. And then obviously the adoption of the diversity, equity, and inclusion and environmental justice resolution, which was recently done, which was really exciting. So any comments on goal 1? I think, yes, and this one, they're all on one page.
Right, I am not, oh, Bruce. Oh.
Thanks, Courtney, and thanks for all the work on this. I see the phrase DEIJ capacity, using the term capacity, growing capacity. I'm not totally clear on what you mean by capacity in regards to DEIJ.
Great question. And I think when we think about capacity, it is knowledge, the tools in your toolbox to implement, understand, work within DEIJ principles. It's kind of an all-inclusive term that we've seen used around, but we can definitely think of another way to say that to clarify what we mean. And Amy is my note taker, so I'm going to try to listen and not take notes.
Right, and I'm watching for hands, Courtney, and I'm not seeing any other hands.
All right, so then providing equitable access to OWEB services. I'm gonna try to get everything on one page here. Okay. So this is really about systems. So you'll see the streamlining of the online grant application, where we did phase 1 to take out information not necessary to make a decision, the PCSRF metrics, and phase 2 we'll be really looking at how to continue to streamline both budget and administrative sections of the application. We've adopted the new rules around match, offering our first tribal specific grant offering, continuing to roll out and develop new online training tools and update those that we have online already. We're investigating right now possibly translation of some of our online videos, closed captioning, making that accessible, and then providing the financial support to entities that are managing small grant teams. And we're in the process of that through the small grant rules and then implementing that in the next biennium. So comments or questions? Okay. Oh, there was, two more that I missed that were under this piece. Small grant rules, which we'll be talking about later today, and which we'll be looking to adopt and then implement next biennium. So expanding the eligibility of applicants. And then the last piece that we've been working on under this is expanding who's eligible to sit on our grant review teams. And Eric's been leading that effort both with OWEB's executive team and our project managers. So we just adopted a new policy around that internally. Any questions or comments? Okay.
You have any hands?
So goal 3, engage with all Oregonians, actively build relationships and promote the work of new and non-traditional partners. As Stephanie leads and as we kick off each DEI board committee meeting, Stephanie updates on the work we've been doing around that, which has been great. Promoting the work of local partners through social media and through OWEB's partnership with Oregon Lottery. Linda has done a great job of both trying to look for traditional and non-traditional partners to highlight through social media, as well as when we're meeting and talking with Oregon Lottery, looking for non-traditional partners that they can highlight when they are highlighting projects. And then seek out non-traditional events where OWEB can intentionally engage with more diverse groups of natural resource professionals and organizations. This is going to be an ongoing area where we're looking to not just send staff to the normal conferences that we're used to going to. River Restoration is a great example, but looking for some other opportunities where we can engage with a greater diversity of partners. Comments or questions here? And I should say on all of this that, and especially since we do have 2 board members not here today, we really welcome any, follow-up from this meeting, written feedback, or you want to have a conversation about any of these. Again, we really consider this to be a living document, and we want to continuously seek feedback on how to word things, how to add new items, and update progress on existing items. So goal 4, leverage qualitative and quantitative data to identify needs and track progress. This is really, I would say, the most section that's really in the beginning as we investigate how to do this. This has been a big topic of the Natural Resources DEI kind of cohort that has been meeting regularly, that Stephanie talked about how do we track data. So one of the ideas that we have brainstormed is, as we do open up small grant program to a greater diversity of entities, this might be a great place to test gathering data? How do we track information? What tools and systems do we use? So that is one of the places that we've identified to start leveraging data. And we've got a couple different staff that are kind of interested in this and doing some investigation and exploring about how we can do that in the future. And then goal 5 is ensure OWEB's communication is transparent, open, and accessible. Again, making sure that, we're reviewing regularly language on our website, making sure it is accessible language. We've had training for OWEB staff on the importance of language, and being really intentional with the words we used, including access to digital materials through subtitles and translations, and then making sure that all of OWEB public meetings have closed captions available, so they are accessible to all people. Questions or comments?
Oh, Bruce.
Thanks, Courtney. On the board resolution, there are 9, be it further resolved. One of them, number 6, says developing an agency diversity, equity, inclusion, and environmental justice action plan, which includes agency level goals, actions, measures of success for annual review. So my first question is this the document that we're going to use to fulfill item 6 on be it further resolved? And then in addition to that, we've got all 9 of the be it further resolved. This might be an opportunity as we finalize this to weave the action plan and the resolution together, addressing each of those further resolved, finding out where they fit in the action plan, and so we can visit them annually for progress, using both documents.
Thanks for that feedback, Bruce.
And I think your question, Bruce, was, is this the action plan that the resolution refers to? And my understanding is yes, it is. And as Courtney said, it is a living document that we plan to continue updating. I think one other note is that I think another important vehicle for tracking implementation beyond this action plan and the resolution is the strategic plan, because that's got an objective related to DEI and environmental justice as well. I'm not seeing any other hands. All right, anything else, Courtney?
So what I see is for next steps is, again, if folks have other comments on this, please feel free to email me. And then we will take another look, Bruce, at the 9 items in the resolution to make sure that we are, fully incorporating those into this document. And then what I would see is probably maybe annually in the June meeting, bring this document back to the committee to update you on where maybe April or June. We'll have to look about when we need to submit it annually. Stephanie, I think it might be June submittal. And so maybe April, bring it back to this committee, update you all on things we've added, then things we've made progress on. And hear from all of you about other items you'd like to see included in this.
I do want to add just a quick note for board members that, as promised in our last meeting, we'll be revisiting committee structure and have some kind of brainstorming and discussion around that in our October meeting. So just to have in the back of your minds, how can we best structure integration implementation of our DEI? Does this committee structure continue to make sense for our next phase? Is there another structure that makes more sense? I've kind of always found this to be an interesting inflection point in organizations that I've worked with, where you've kind of finalized your DEI plans and shifting into implementation phase, and you don't want to lose track of the progress and just say, oh, we don't need a committee anymore. Let's just fully integrate this. And also it may be that a different structure, a different frequency of meeting, a different kind of committee might make more sense going forward. So we'll have some discussion on that in our October meeting.
Thanks, Sarah. And I see that our chair, Kelly Coates, has joined the committee meeting. Good morning, Kelly. I'll have you introduce yourself and then I can let you know what we've covered and where we're at in the agenda.
Sounds great. Thanks, Stephanie. Apologies for being late today, but I'm Kelly Coates. I am the tribal representative on the OWEB board, and I am the I guess just chair of this now. I keep wanting to say co-chair, but just chair. Thanks. Yeah, where are we at?
Great. So we've covered the quarterly outreach update. Courtney and Ken presented the tribal project development grants, and then Courtney just reviewed the DEI action plan. So we're on the small grant rules agenda item.
Great. Okay. Let's go ahead and move forward with that. I think it's Eric Hartstein and Eric Williams.
Bruce has a hand up too. Sorry, guys. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Bruce.
Thanks. Good morning, Kelly. I would suggest we consider adding the environmental justice part of the name to the action plan, since it's in the resolution, something we've talked about extensively. So if we have the resolution, having it consistent between the resolution and the action plan, just for your consideration. Thanks.
Thanks, Bruce. I think we can probably add that. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to kick it over to Eric Williams and Eric Hartstein, and also just want to say thanks to the OWEB staff for running the meeting for me and making sure everything went smoothly.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. So the small grant program rules, this is a carryover from the board discussion of the topic at the July meeting. And just as maybe a bit of a reminder that the major driver behind rulemaking in the small grant program was the board's desire to broaden applicant eligibility to the small grant program. And the proposed revisions to the small grant program rules address this by removing the eligibility restriction to the program to just tribes, watershed councils, and soil and water conservation districts, so that any entity that is eligible for other OWEB grant programs would be eligible for the small grant program as well. And as OWEB staff were considering these proposed revisions to the rules, we recognize that if eligibility to apply to the small grant program was to be expanded, then the composition of the small grant teams should also be broadened beyond tribes, councils, and districts, as the teams play a really important administrative role in the program, including recommending projects for funding to OWEB. So I'm going to share my screen here really quick. Okay, can y'all see that okay? Okay, so staff discussed the issue with the Rulemaking Advisory Committee and came up with a solution of the small grant teams inviting, in coordination with OWEB, participation on the teams to other eligible applicants in their respective small grant areas. and that any eligible applicant that requests to participate on the small grant team will be a member of the team. So this is the language here that reflects that. And then when the draft rules were brought before the board in July, the draft retained some of the original language that stated that a small grant team must have at least one actively participating watershed council representative and one soil and water conservation district representative to be eligible to allocate small grant funds. And that was right here. And it was pointed out that by retaining this language, it could hinder the goal of broadening participation on the small grant teams themselves. And so after the board meeting, staff made the edit that you see here, removing the language about having at least one watershed council and soil and water conservation district be eligible to allocate small grant funds, and replacing it with at least two actively participating eligible applicant organization types to be eligible. So in practice, this could mean that it could be one watershed council and one soil and water conservation district, but it could also mean a tribe and a local government, a school and a nonprofit, or some other combination to reach the two actively participating eligible applicant organization types threshold. So staff think this edit helps address the concern about the composition of the small grant teams. And maybe I'll stop here and open it up for discussion.
Thank you, Eric. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Can I raise a virtual hand, Kelly, by raising a real hand? I'm not used to Zoom anymore. I just wanted to note, Eric, there was also some discussion in that board meeting about the composition of the Rules Advisory Committee. And I know that this was before my time. I know that you guys had done a lot of proactive outreach to try to engage a broader diversity of partners. You shared that at the meeting. And I just wanted to sort of reassure and refresh board members that we've continued that conversation after the last board meeting and continued to work with the executive team to sort of brainstorm ways of removing barriers to participating in our Rules Advisory Committee, but also just recognizing we have a lot coming up. And so we are reaching out to partners looking for best practices for ways that we could seek input from groups that might have a lower barrier in terms of time and time commitment than participating in a Rules Advisory Committee, and sort of trying to figure out how to knit in a diversity of voices to this kind of effort. So as you see, coming up in our October meeting, we'll have initiation of some new rules advisory processes, as well as a couple that we don't think that we probably need to convene a RAC for. We'll be coming to that meeting with a proposal for board members in terms of kind of engagement with the board with rulemaking. And I also just want folks to know, because I think that's a really valid and important concern, that this is something we're working on. It's something we're talking to our partner agencies about. It's something all state agencies, I think, are really struggling with, given especially the volume of rulemaking that we have going these days. And we don't have, a silver bullet solution at this point, but it is something we've continued the conversation on, continue to welcome input, and continue to set a high bar for ourselves in terms of actively welcoming engagement, but also just recognize that it would be a full-time job for anybody to engage with the level of rulemaking that's going on in the natural resources sector at the state level right now. And so we will need to find ways for folks to provide input into these processes that may not be formal membership on a rules advisory committee, but provides a similar level of input and influence.
Great. Thanks for that, Sarah. If there are no questions on this proposed edits, the next step will be we'll be bringing the rules back for board consideration at the October board meeting.
Thanks, Eric. I'm not seeing any questions or any hands up. Okay. All right. I don't think we had any additional agenda items for this meeting. I did just want to bring up one thing, and that is that I am looking for a little bit of help chairing this committee. I don't know if that was already talked about before I got on. No, okay. So I am looking for some help co-chairing the DEI committee now that I'm stepping into the board co-chair role. Is anyone interested, or has staff heard from anybody that might be interested in it? Do we need to start recruiting for more members of this committee?
Kelly, I don't believe we've heard from anyone, but I suggest that we take this up in our October meeting and kind of continuing on with the committee structure. I think we may have kind of in communicating to folks that our committee structure is a little bit in flux right now, may have made it less likely by accident that someone would volunteer to pitch in here. So I have not forgotten. I know Stephanie and the rest of the executive team have not forgotten. And I think if we loop that into sort of what's our committee structure going forward and how to make sure that we're sharing that work appropriately amongst members, I think that would be a good thing to loop into our October conversation. And I think I can commit to making sure that if this committee moves forward in its present term, in its present form, that if somebody doesn't volunteer, we'll help somebody get voluntold for that, so that you're not carrying too many chairs at one time. So thanks for bearing with us, Kelly. And I think by the December meeting, then we'll have a good solution in place.
Okay.
Does that sound okay, Steph? Sorry if I kind of stepped on your toes there. I know this has been your committee.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, and then public Stephanie.
Oh, sorry, Kelly. We did do a call for public comment. We didn't receive any written comment, and nobody raised their hand to provide verbal comments. I did think of one other update that I didn't cover during the non-traditional partner outreach, and that was just a great email conversation that I had with Sarah Spangler from the Nonprofit Association of Oregon after the conversation that Kelly and I had with Maya Cook, who had submitted a public comment at the last committee meeting. So if it's okay, Kelly, I can share a short update on that. So just to refresh everyone's memory, Maya Cook provided a public comment at the last committee meeting regarding the draft resolution and just making sure that we strengthened the language regarding people experiencing disabilities. So we did that, and the board adopted the resolution in July. When Kelly and I had a follow-up conversation with Maya, some of the other themes that came up during our conversation were just organizational capacity challenges for many of the local partners that OWEB works with, and just wanting additional support and resources around human resources topics in general, as well as DEI. And I had a great follow-up conversation with Eric Williams' staff in the restoration grants team about that. Several folks mentioned working with the Nonprofit Association of Oregon when they were employed by watershed councils. And so I reached out to the Nonprofit Association of Oregon and got a great email with a summary of resources from one of their staff, including HR support and trainings that they provide. They offer DEI trainings periodically to members. So I just wanted to put in a plug for that resource. And one of the things that Kelly and I talked about in the follow-up conversation that we had is what can OWEB do to support organizations that are struggling with some of these issues? And I think one of them, given all the staff changes that some of our local partners have had, is to make sure that they're aware of those types of state level resources like the Nonprofit Association of Oregon, and then of course their own membership organizations. And on the local government side, I wanted to note that the Special Districts Association of Oregon provides some of the same resources to, for example, irrigation districts and soil and water conservation districts that the Nonprofit Association provides to nonprofits.
Thank you, Stephanie. Great update. Yeah, that was our conversation with Maya really sparked some additional conversation between Stephanie and I, and some additional thoughts about just how OWEB can connect folks with some of the resources that they might need. So yeah, great. Thank you so much for following up on that, Stephanie. Really happy to hear that. Okay. So we are on to the good of the order and topics for future committee meetings. Is there anything additional, any other topics that the committee would like to address in the future? Are we planning for this into the future, or are we kind of revisiting at our October meeting structure and then going from there? Sarah, if you could help me with the process here.
Sure. Yeah. I think the best plan would be to go ahead and count on a December meeting. I think even if the board gets together and sort of brainstorms and starts to move towards a recommendation to change our committee structure in October, that it will likely, I think it's very likely that we'll want to have a follow-up conversation with this group, whether that is a continuation of the committee in its current form or a different form or something else. I think that we'll want to discuss that here as a small group before it's fully set into motion. So, Steph, does that sound right to you? I think we agreed would plan on a final meeting of the year and sort of revisit whatever we come up with in the October board meeting and figure out how to move forward with implementation and leadership and staffing of it at that point.
Okay, that sounds great. So then in planning for the December meeting, we'll have our regular quarterly update regarding outreach to non-traditional partners and government to government outreach. And that's kind of the one standing item that we've had. I think the other things that we discussed today, I don't know if we need to carry those over into our next December meeting. So I'll open it up for the members and staff for any additional topics for that December meeting that we can think of now. If not, we can, work on it in the meantime. Okay.
Everybody has their thinking faces on, Kelly.
I know. Yeah. We're all racking our brains. I mean, it is the first day back after a long weekend, so let's give ourselves a little bit of time, right?
Yeah, I would encourage board members and committee members on staff, if you think of ideas that we'd like to take into the October meeting, I'd welcome kind of individual feedback to help make sure that's a productive brainstorming session, and also just recognizing that I'm leading that conversation and I'm a new member to this committee and in fact to all of our committees. So I would welcome hearing from folks with sort of reflections and recommendations going into the October conversation.
Sounds good. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn the meeting today? Okay. Seeing no hands, then thanks everyone for your time today. Really appreciate it. Good to see everybody. And we will talk with you and see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Happy September.